So to do so, our agenda for today, we're going to go over strengths and competencies of international students, talking about how to be best foot forward, linking your own narratives, some of those elements that you all have been navigating, and the strengths you bring to the table. We're going to go over an overview of your post-graduation choices, types of work authorization, just to again familiarize yourselves with these concepts. We're going to talk about the employer perspective, potential candidate questions you'll encounter, and even go over a practice activity on how to talk in a more eloquent way about sponsorship. And then just wrapping it up with job search tips and any questions and answers you'll have at the end. We would love to help and assist you any way possible. But yeah, that is our agenda for today. And again, we want to start by building a community of confidence, and what that means is, like, before we go and pinpointing all these exact skills you're going to bring to employers, we want to outline the purpose and intent in this conversation. Here at Seattle U, our office, in tandem with the ISC and all of our campus partners, we do our part in trying to make sure both the community inside and outside of Seattle U recognize the incredible value that you all bring to any space. Alongside all of you, it's important that in such fearful or uncertain times, we build a network of support with one another on your respective journeys. We want to make space to acknowledge your fears and the unique challenges, and help identify the unique characteristics that help you stand out from the pack. And by doing so, we're hoping to reignite your motivation for finding the appropriate opportunities and build up a contagious sense of confidence that employers can feed off of in your application processes. And so, international students' strengths and competencies. We want to highlight that, throughout the process of being an international student, you are extremely resourceful. You had to navigate different paperwork, navigate what schools you were going to attend, clubs, internships, and other activities to get involved in your campus. You bring to the table global insights of your different cultures that you might have experienced back home or encountered on your travels. You are perhaps multilingual, bringing over your native languages, learning English, practicing those skills both here and in the context of your education. You have this growth mindset, and that means being the ability to be curious and discover new aspects of this new like learning opportunity. You are adaptable, especially in times of COVID when you had to perhaps pivot last minute to remote learning and still trying to foster a sense of creativity and engagement with your studies and perhaps prospective job employments. You've had to, flip your strategies to make sure that you're suiting whatever or you're taking advantage of whatever opportunity is available to you. Perhaps you're utilizing some innovative practices if you're thinking about looking at peer resources or thinking about how you could bring your perspective to have no creative interactions with whoever you're with. Resilience, absolutely, making sure that you are supporting yourself and that you are, giving yourself, like, with your studies, doing the tutoring sessions. If you are a part of, like, for example, the wonderful international student dinner or perhaps clubs, you've been trying to build morale and building community, and that in itself is a wonderful prospect for employers. Risk tolerance, just going to a foreign country to study, that shows that you are adept and taking a chance and believing in yourself and your skills. You're self-motivated. You are looking into, without anyone pushing you, perhaps you're here by yourself and you have to keep accountable to your own goals. And that sense of independence and being organized within the complex processes of being an international student will absolutely transfer to your experience as being a wonderful worker in whatever institution. And so in the chat, we invite you, if you identify with any of these skills or all of them, just put them in just to have another practice of voicing what you bring to the table. Again, I want to emphasize that if we want to come from a strengths, not a deficit perspective, because many times you might think you're at a disadvantage, but reminding yourself of these specific skills will allow you to, again, build your own confidence in engaging with employers, making sure that you're more an attractive employee. So talking about then after those skills and wondering and, doing an assessment of yourself, how are we going to frame that in a perspective that is attractive to employers, and things you perhaps should consider when you are going into conversations, right? uh, you need to consider and or doing your research with these certain organizations, you should think about the size of the companies. Assessing the size of the company or firm. A smaller institution might be less familiar or have smaller means for long-term sponsorship, but they might be an optimal place for growth and fostering more meaningful relationships, making deeper connections, allowing you to kind of stand out. And so application to such firms will require more insight and more consideration on their unique growth, as opposed to if you're going to larger institutions. Typically they have more means and the ability to set more OPT/CPT opportunities or perhaps future sponsorship. But if these positions are highly competitive, you should be thinking about strategically how to proposition yourself in an interview, thinking about, if they have a specific mission like Microsoft, where their organization values are they want to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. As an international student, you have firsthand experience in tuning into the various cultural norms of different countries, allowing you to have this dynamic perspective of obstacles that you can help design, appropriate solutions for. So thinking about, again, looking into their mission, especially even in larger or smaller institutions, being strategic in what you could bring to the table. And the research part of that could include setting up casual informational interviews, having conversations via LinkedIn or other tools that we have, such as Red Hawk Landing or Alumni Network, asking those inquisitive questions on what the company needs or its future endeavors. You can utilize those plans in strategizing innovative contributions, whether it's something like expanding a market to an international base or catering to a local base of perhaps immigrants or individuals that have similar cultural values. You can think about how to apply that to different customer interactions or team/project management. Push your imagination to pitch yourself in a way that brings forth the best of all of you, all of your authentic experiences, and that way employers can see that you have built yourself up to be the best kind of worker in their mind frame.
Yeah.
Go, Carol.
Sorry. Here I was supposed to give the example of a student who was, and this is an SU student, and she was did an internship at a local company here, but that was considering going global and going into markets in like South America, in Latin America and stuff. And it turns out that the employer was at first hesitant to even consider her more beyond the internship, but she was able, through her internship, show her skills and that she had market knowledge that would be valuable for that employer as the employer is considering international expansion. And that actually converted her from an internship position into a full-time position. And just as Mary Jo was talking, and I was reflecting on my own experience in terms of size of organization. I was formerly an international student many, many years ago. And when I was seeking work as an OPT, on my OPT, I ended up actually at a small or mid-sized company. Actually, I would even say it was a family-sized business. But I was able to, they did not know much, but I was able to use my knowledge on what it is and what this process requires, just by researching and being knowledgeable, and they were able to listen to me. And small size organizations, you may have a chance of standing out compared to the hundreds of thousands. Say a larger size application is organization is considering all the different applicants. So small, you may be able to stand out more than some of these larger organizations. So good point, Mary Jo.
Nice. Moving forward in assessing, what it is that could possibly be on your roadmap. Things are always changing. We like to say at the Career Engagement Office, promote a non-linear way of growth. And so these are perhaps all of the things that you can keep in your mind about possibilities for future employment. These are also past experience some international students have chosen to pursue. So one of them, being if you are considering returning home to your home country or to a third country, how to start a long distance job search or long distance application for further education, perhaps back at home. You could even consider joining a military or national service, or especially in times of safety and security, if you need to delay your job search and go back in order to reground yourself. All of it is valid, and you shouldn't necessarily take it as a step backward. Again, there you are bringing your full self and of the skills that you have learned here at Seattle University and at your prior institutions, perhaps, and that it's okay to also look towards home if that is applicable to you for opportunities. If you want to stay in the US to work, make sure that you know that not just any job will do, it will require alignment to your bachelor's degree or your master's degree. And then there's limited amount of time to find a job after that study is completed. Typically, it's within that 90-day window. And then be mindful of that work authorization. The work authorization can expire, and so we'll talk about tools later on to how to navigate those conversations. Or you could perhaps pursue further education if you want to seek another degree, perhaps a short-term certificate, a graduate program. These things will allow you to again continue building up your repertoire of what makes you more equipped to pursue your specific dreams and goals. And so, just if you haven't seen this already, we want to go over the differences in types of work authorizations you might be familiar with. There is CPT. Those are for F1 students who meet eligibility. It has to be before program completion of your education. It must be an integral part of the academic program. For grad students, the internship must be a planned program, part of the planned program of your study. It usually won't affect your eligibility for OPT, and then it's authorized by the university. Specifically, you can specifically work through the wonderful International Student Center. And then OPT, the only main difference is that it is post your completion of your academic curriculum. Again, the authorization is granted by the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. It can take up to 3 months for this process, so please be on top of your paperwork. Up to 12 months per educational level. And then if you are in the STEM specialization, you can be eligible for up to 24 months of an extension. And then acknowledging that H-1B is this longer employment sponsorship visa, permits temporary employment in specialty occupations in which employer has to validate and vouch on your behalf that you are contributing to a project for a certain amount of time. And then we just wanted to say that is an evolving process with different administrations, different leadership. H-1B specifications can change, so please always keep up to date. Ask the burning questions on what could be applicable to you, and know that you have Seattle University as a support network to kind of guide and navigate through that process. So yeah, those are the student strengths, competencies of international students, and I'll pass it on to Carol to talk more about the employer perspective. Oh, Carol, you're muted.
There's so many times when talking to employers, it's always like so nervous and things. So I want you to first go armed knowing what they can and cannot ask you as you are getting ready to state your case as what your qualifications. So employers are not supposed to be asking you these sets of questions here. These are, when you see these kinds of questions, there's likely going to be bias and possibly discrimination intent behind these questions. So, and sometimes, especially this one of citizenship, it tends to be asked a lot. Sometimes people unknowingly, but be careful with that question. And when employers ask you, you may want to reframe it for them. Instead of saying, oh, that's an illegal question, you may want to say something like, I think what you're trying to find out is my work authorization status. And then go with that. So that's a different question. that is permissible under certain guidelines. But these kinds of questions, know them and understand them and see them when they're coming, and so that you are prepared to sort of answer it in a way that also doesn't prevent you from moving forward in the interviewing process, for example. Okay, next slide. So, you know, the best way to go into any type of, in your job search and everything, and the mindset is being able to sort of understand your work authorization fully and what you can bring, and help educate the employer as well as yourself. And I know it's frustrating and you feel like, well, they're the ones in business, they should know this stuff. Sometimes they don't. Often, especially the recruiters, they may have certain instructions from their organizations, and they're just kind of going by sort of a boilerplate or framework. But by you being able to fully understand and what to expect, and also get get at least to the first step of the interviews, it's good to know what you can expect from the employer and how to respond to that. Next slide. So these questions here should be the extent of which the employers should ask you. So, do you have authorization to work in the US? That's a legitimate question. And will you need sponsorship now or in the future? And when you ask these questions, it's good to be as honest as possible. If they detect that you are being deceptive in any way, this could actually lead to termination, and that will burn a bridge that you don't want to. Remember, sometimes some of the people you contact, they move around in different organizations, so you don't want to encounter them, down the road in another job search, and what they recall was deception when responding to this. Another question, which sometimes could be illegal depending on how it asked, is what languages you speak. But this is only if it is related to your job. So, for example, if you were getting that job of marketing, and they're going to you're going to focus on the team that markets to people in Portugal, then you can say, I speak Portuguese, or something like that. Or in Brazil as well, where they speak Portuguese, So you want to be able to see if it's related directly to the skills required for you to do your job. Next slide. So there is no right place to disclose this, but what you want to think about is delaying when that question about this. And I know it's important because you have to balance, should I pursue this job? But what if I pursue this job and they end up not being someone who can sponsor my ultimate goal if you're seeking sponsorship? But sometimes you're not seeking sponsorship, so that shouldn't worry you. You should be like, I just want to get my 1 year of experience and then I'll move on. So what you want to do is really be talking about your skills, and when this does come up, again, respond as honestly as possible. And again, showing that you have confidence to articulate. You're like, oh yeah, actually I do have 1 year worth, 12 months worth of a work authorization, or whatever it might be. And make it as casual as possible, exuding confidence that the employer themselves will not be like taken aback. If they see sort of your hesitancy, they might think it's complex and complicated. But we also know that a lot of these things, the employer may, especially the CPT and OPT, there's very little for them to do, because most of that is handled by the ISC. They will give you like the dates and the job descriptions and terms and things like that. But pretty much they don't necessarily have to do any legal stuff or paperwork processing at that point. So it's good to know that and exude that confidence when talking to employers. I do remember, and we're going to go into some exercises here in a minute of some of the things you can actually say, but we did have a student who was at a career fair, and I think that's why I love this workshop is she literally came from this workshop, attended a career fair like a week later, and she's like, oh my God, I can't believe it worked. Because when she was trying to talk to an employer about her work authorization, and she was so excited. And again, she just wanted the chance to be able to prove her skills, and then you can have a different conversation once that happens. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so when this is also the art of a conversation. How do we want to talk about these things? You don't want to start with, do you sponsor? Because that will be a yes or no, you know. And then also we want to remove the word sponsor, you know, because sponsor almost always just says money is involved somewhere. Or there's sort of like, what does this mean? Am I putting my word? You know, like there's something about that word. And it's also, there's nothing wrong with the word itself, but it sort of created this complexity that doesn't necessarily need to be there. And if we go to the next slide, you will see that we're talking about using the word petitioning. And this is, instead of the yes or no questions, is, will, you know, you want to be talking about like, what is the policy your company has about petitioning H-1Bs? You know, that invites a conversation. You know, you don't want to close those doors before before even a window is open. You know, you just want to give them some opportunity. And even that is not the first thing we want coming out of conversations when we meet someone or we're networking, even in a virtual world. You really want to be showing that you're very interested in that job. The sponsorship is secondary. You know, it's like another part of this. You're showing that I'm very interested in this job. These are the skills I bring here. This is why I'm excited about working at your organization. I saw you're planning on doing research in this area. I saw you're developing these kinds of things. How exciting that last week there was an announcement of your going public. You know, I saw this story in this industry. What, you know, so show them you've done your research, show them your excitement about that position, show them those skills and the uniqueness that you're bringing that we talked about. You know, you're resilient, you are adaptable, you know, you're able to tolerate risk. Say it's a startup you're working with. So these are the things that you can be talking about prior to even talking about if a company can petition your work, future work visas. So next slide. So here are some practice things that statements that please take a screenshot of this and sort of use it as a script to be talking about your experience. Mary Jo, do you want to go into this next? Oh, she closed out. Okay.
Yes, sorry, my internet was. Yeah, would you like to proceed to the next slide?
So it's, yeah, and so here's the script. These are the other scripts that you can use. You know, my education, you know, when this question comes up about work authorization, you know, my education visa covers me for 9 months, you know, or 12 months, however many, during which time I do not need, you know, sponsorship or a petition. I'll continue working. Now, to continue working beyond my time, my employer would have to file a petition for a work visa. But I expect by that time, I'll have demonstrated my value and fit for this organization. So you see how that really just tells the employer, like, you know, I got this, we're not there yet, just give me a chance to work. How does this sound to you all? Can I see some thumbs up or some reactions? again, please take screenshots of these of this slide, and also there was also the one which was previously as well. And those are the ones we will go into practice. How long do we want to practice?
We're going to do this for 5 minutes. So what's going to happen, I've sent some of the prompts also in the chat. We're going to put you all into some breakout rooms, and you're just going to briefly go over saying this with confidence to your partner. Nothing too complicated, but just get comfortable with the words, kind of rolling out through your mouth. I'm going to stop sharing. And again, make use of this time strategically. Let's do, and I also, again, it's in the chat. So if you would like to use that in order to kind of guide your experience or guide your conversation, I'm going to perhaps move some people around to make sure we're in the right space, but good luck. Again, we're just doing this practice, and then we'll come back for Q&A. Job search. First and foremost, you should be familiar with Handshake, which is our career search platform housed in the university, in which recruiters already identify if they accept OPT, CPT, H-1B, or could be open to petitioning for sponsorship. So definitely utilize that if you haven't yet. CareerShift is also an excellent resource for international students. It has wonderful filters showing organizations that have in the past sponsored previous international students, or if they're again accepting, or if they're having hiring freezes or layoffs. CareerShift is a wonderful tool to also help you organize your job search platforms or your job search opportunities. There's Lock in China if you are looking for specific abroad opportunities within East Asia. This is just a global market of career opportunities. And then Vault is one of our more informative platforms that will give you career advice, direct you useful useful lists and guidance. I've seen some wonderful blog tips about how to support international students in different specific industries, whether it's finance, law, or business. You can use that to help you look for templates for your resumes and cover letters, and also rankings for different institutions. And then Carol, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about Red Hawk Landing and some other wonderful opportunities.
Red Hawk Landing is Seattle University's network for both social, you can get to meet people and mentors, and professional as well. And please sign up for that. And there's actually a community for international students. So, just log in with your SU credentials, and you can actually even populate it with your LinkedIn as well, profiles. And then once you're in it, you want to also go take the next step in there and connect with the international community on Red Hawk Landing. Here you can find other international students as well as alumni, see where they are around the world, and also here domestically in the US. And sometimes they'll be planning other events and things going on. So that's a good way to engage and build your network and build community. And there's the library guides. I did want to also really also emphasize, like, career shift is really great because you can actually go in and seek organizations that have previously hired international professions, see who are those hiring managers are, and see what kind of history that they have. So sometimes in the past they may have sponsored, but maybe they're no longer sponsoring, so just be careful of that. And also, the other areas I wanted to point out here was, of course, there's a LinkedIn and alumni feature you can join. We want to be able to also be thinking about targeting some, say, like some nonprofits, some research institutions, and some educational institutions are not subject to the annual cap. I just did some research on this because I wanted to make sure I'm giving you proper information. And I even saw some public school systems for certain teaching positions actually are not subject to H-1B. So that's not something we naturally think about as sponsoring this, H-1Bs, for example, but hello, there it is. And they're not subject to the annual cap, which is, I think, like 85,000 a year or something like that, visas that they give out, or 65,000. And again, doing lots and lots of research. But as you're doing this research pieces, I also want to just be able to remind you to care for yourself. If you see red flags, like if it's too good to be true, it probably is. You want to double check it, measure it against other sources that you're seeing out there. We certainly don't want anybody taking advantage of you and for you to get your hopes up, raised up, and find it was maybe fraudulent. My Visa Jobs does a good job of listing organizations that have been barred from being qualified employers. So that's something you can look about. But there'll be other resources in learning about these opportunities from either the ISC, us, and I'll put some in the chat as well. So please save the chat so you can have this information with you. Am I missing anything else?
No, I would say I would also want to invite another colleague of ours from Career Engagement to talk about an opportunity that could be applicable to your studies. So Sabrina, please introduce yourself and tell us what.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Sabrina Wise, and I also work in the Career Engagement Office. And I also work on our external relations or employer relations team. And a lot of the time we'll have recruiters actually contact us directly and say, hi, we really want to recruit international students for this specific opportunity. And so we had something like this just come up. And so I just wanted to share it with all of you. This might be relevant to some of you, is that Costco International is really wanting to recruit international students who are citizens of Japan, South Korea, or China, and who are thinking about maybe returning home after graduation for their manager and training program. So it's this pretty cool program that kind of accelerates your process of becoming a manager for Costco. They put you through a lot of training, a lot of experience, and then you end up at the end of it getting to kind of be a leader for a Costco warehouse in this management role. Fast paced, pretty exciting. And they're looking for students who fit that description. So I wanted to just shout that out, and I'll put the link to it in the chat because it is a job that is posted on Handshake right now. And so if you go into Handshake, you can actually just read more about this, see if you might qualify for it, see if it's something that interests you. And if this is something that interests you and you do decide to apply for it, let us know. Let somebody in the career engagement office know. You could let me know, or Mary Jo or Carol, but we can actually then tell the recruiter, we have students who have applied for this, and kind of elevate your application for them. We want to advocate for you. So here is the link, and that will take you to that opportunity. But this is just an example of the kinds of opportunities that we hear about where they're really excited about recruiting international students. So if this particular one doesn't apply to you, no worries, but know there's more stuff like this. So be checking Handshake and looking for these as they come up. And that's it.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Thanks, Sabrina. And I see some questions in the chat. Let me just go quickly. I think there was a question about if public schools are not subject to H-1B visa, do they hire, what visa do they hire on? So again, the H-1B visa cap it is nuance specific, and it's certain teaching positions within the public schools. And there's all kinds of work visas available beyond the H-1B. So just know that those are available and they give different kinds of work opportunities. But I do know there are some which are just specific to certain teaching positions because there is a teacher shortage. For example, teaching math is one area that comes to mind.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And we invite you all, if you have any other questions, please put them in the chat for our remaining time. We have about 3 or so minutes to cover them. Other things we want to, really point out in your job search as an international student, again, especially building those networks. I can't emphasize onboarding to like Red Hawk Landing, onboarding to like LinkedIn alumni features, because typically having someone internally with your back, who can vouch for your skills, or at least having these points of interaction to talk about, what other companies already, if they've already hired international students, and you can have a conversation with that Seattle U alumni, letting them know, and then asking about prospective projects or where they're utilizing their global skills, that can help you get a leg up in that process.
Yeah, and also before we head out, I had one more handout. I was hoping to give an attachment, but what I will do is we will get the list of everyone who attended, and I'll forward it to Lauren to share out. We do have sort of like a handout which you can practice seeing what the like the OPT and CPT is, and you can give it to the employer so they know what their role is and what your role is. So that will be helpful. But the key beyond all of this is really learning to really talk from a strength perspective, all those wonderful things that you bring, like critical thinking, resilience. You are resilient before the ability to adapt and shift. If you see how people struggled in adapting to the pandemic, I think our international students really had a leg up in this sort of switch and pivot that they do, because they've done it already and are like, wow, this nothing. Let's go with the flow. So these are examples of things that you can show and about your abilities and skills that really come from a strength perspective, not a deficit. You are just extremely valuable and have so much to offer the world. The idea of multiple languages, we're a global university. I mean, we're a global world. Everything we do is global. Having more languages to speak is an advantage and can help organizations in many, many ways. It also shows your ability to learn, which is very key. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
That's very wonderful information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I did drop in the chat a couple of other workshops. In fact, there's one happening tonight, although that one's more, I think, geared towards software and coding. And then there's another one happening, I think, later this week. So, but those are external that that come through my inbox and whatnot. So I'm just sharing them as just passing on the information.
I just have one question, please. I just want to know, like, what's the biggest drawback or challenge at, in the current situation for us international students to be able to get a job? Like, I agree with all the facts that you mentioned. It's very positive to know that we bring in a lot to the table. But on the other hand, I think I come from a background wherein I have this mental block that, okay, we would always be put at the back of the file, just because we are students, or like the hassle that a company has to go through doing the paperwork to put us on the right visa and all of these things. I feel we're always at the end of the row. So do you think it's our biggest drawback, or should I just remove that out of my mind?
A lot is the mindset. But what I'll say right now is the world is going through a global, everyone has their and it's, in a way, it's what we focus on and we see is our deficit in our mindset. Today I was reading a story where people who are a little more seasoned or over 50 and 55 are just like, no one's going to hire me. They're just going to hire younger people. So they're already sort of excluding themselves. So everybody sort of has a little bit of an insecurity about what their employment prospects might be. So I would imagine that it's not I wouldn't say it's not a big deal. It's just something we have to reframe our thinking about it. All of us are in this, but you do have, if that was removed, what would stop you? And also just think, the odds of not applying or pursuing a position means 100% chance you won't get it. So you at least have to go for it.
Right. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. And I think, to add on to your question, of course, we want to be, you want, I imagine, like a realistic perspective, or maybe you're searching for perhaps, like if you've heard horror stories and you heard confirmations of things, if this process being difficult, perhaps, yes, it is. But if you are doing your work, being diligent in, propositioning, as like Carol has been saying, in the strengths perspective, especially with smaller or medium-sized organizations where you are going above and beyond the competition and knowing how you're going to contribute, knowing that you have the skills, like, again, that energy is infectious. And it's not impossible unless you take yourself completely out of the equation. So just reaffirming, yes, you can have those fears, but don't let it paralyze you in the search.
It is no doubt a challenge, but I would say, again, everyone's out there trying their best, and just put your best foot forward. You'll be okay. And I think sometimes you'll be surprised. Don't limit, and that's the other thing. Don't limit your job searches. I think sometimes we really try to focus and just have this tunnel vision about something, but be creative, open your mind. You said arts leadership, so I'm sure that has room for creativity to make things work.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, yeah, that's very positive to go forward. But another question, just a follow-up on question on this. So do we have like a time frame? Like, I'm on a 2-year master's degree program. So is there like a period wherein I'll have to start looking out for it, or I just go put myself out there in the market?
Lauren can answer that for you when they do their workshops.
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you're thinking specifically about OPT, for example, most of our students are doing OPT after you graduate. You might start doing that work authorization for 12 months. So the earliest you can apply for OPT is going to be 90 days before you graduate. So it's the earliest you can apply. You can go to an OPT workshop every month. Dale hosts one, and we have those listed on Connect SU when they come up. If you're thinking about CPT, so if you're thinking about internships, just talk to your academic department to make sure that you are able to do an internship for credit. And then once, you know, your academic department approves it, you get that job offer, bring that into us and we'll be able to authorize that. And that can happen anytime during your studies, as long as you've maintained status for at least 3 consecutive quarters that you've been on F1 status. But just reach out to us if you're also concerned about the timing of that. Yeah, because you definitely wouldn't want to have to say, oh yeah, I can start working right away, and then you actually don't have the authorization to start working yet. So that's kind of a balance of timing for that.
That makes sense. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Lauren, I think that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much for you all attending to the end, asking such wonderful questions. If you want to continue engaging with the Career Engagement Office, we're available for 30-minute coaching appointments. We'll work in tandem with the ISC and your academic departments to make sure that, you know, we keep each other supported throughout this process. And if you have any, you know, please look out to your emails for follow-up information, follow-ups for this recording, look out for further events. And it was such a pleasure to have you on this lovely Tuesday noon.
Yes, thank you all so much for being here today. I hope this was helpful to you. Thank you so much to Carol and Mary Jo for doing this wonderful presentation. Like I mentioned in the chat, I'll be sending out a recording to all of our participants, and we'll also try to send it out to our newsletter as well if you have friends that wanted to make it but couldn't. And I'll also try to include some of the links that they talked about as well, so that you can kind of go back and reference all of that. But thank you so much again for all being here today, and I hope you have a good rest of your Tuesday.
Take care, everybody.
Take care. Thank you.